Hey everybody, how's it going? Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, single game $1 million winner, here with video number 3 for the Thanksgiving Showdown slates, single game NFL DFS picks, lineup advice for FanDuel and DraftKings, this time for the late night Falcons and Saints game, Thanksgiving night. Big prize pools on both sites, both DraftKings and FanDuel, is the biggest single game slate of the day. So we're going to go into a quick 10-minute video. In fact, the last video was like 7 minutes long. I'm not sure if we can do that again because there's a lot to talk about. So let's start. This slate is a little easier than Bills Cowboys for low risk, but not as easy as Bears Lions. Remember, low risk contests, 50-50s, double ups, head to heads. Contests where you double your money. They're not exponential payouts. Just looking to get into the top half of the field or beat your single opponent. And in those contests for single game slates, we like to get as many touchdowns as we can. Try to lock up scoring on both offenses. And we do that by playing both quarterbacks and both running backs. However, this Saints game, Michael Thomas has one of the highest expectations of any player in the league, regardless of the fact that he's a wide receiver, 25 DraftKings points in 5 straight games, projected for over 10 targets. Only player on the Thanksgiving slate projected for more than 8 targets. So Thomas is in a good spot. So ideally, if it was possible, we would want to get Michael Thomas, Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara, Matt Ryan, and Devontae Freeman, who practiced Monday and Tuesday, missed the last 2 games with a foot injury. Dan Quinn said he is expected to play, so we can anticipate Devontae Freeman going back into his 60 to 70% workload. And he's 6,200 on DraftKings. That leaves us 1,600. Not very possible, and that's not even using one of these guys as a captain. Now, again, if you can find some contests where there are not a ton of experienced players, you're looking for players with no badges, you're looking for inexperienced players in head-to-heads especially, but also small field 50-50s, double-ups, smaller leagues, 3 to 10 players. If you can find contests like that, you can certainly find a way to make it work. Here are 2 ways that you can potentially do it, and it hinges on a couple of things. So let's try way number 1. And let's just say we go Drew Brees at captain, Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, Matt Ryan. These 4 for sure, I think, have higher expectations than Devontae Freeman at running back. That leaves us just $1,200 left over. So what we could do, a couple things. If Julio Jones misses the game, Julio Jones is questionable. He did not practice Monday or Tuesday. He left the game early with a shoulder injury. It's an AC joint sprain. Maybe tough to play. We'll see if they decide to hold him out. If they do, Christian Blake is minimum price on both sites. And over the last 3 weeks, he made his NFL debut a couple weeks ago. And in those games, he has played 63 snaps, has drawn 12 targets on the 63 snaps. Now, granted, a lot of that was in garbage time. Atlanta was forced to pass the ball, not guaranteed he gets that target per snap number. But if Julio misses, he will start and he'll play in 3 wide receiver sets. So potentially high volume role, especially for his price tag. We generally don't like to play these $200 players on DraftKings in low risk contests, but in low risk it may be necessary this week if you want to fit in all of the highest price guys. And if we look at this, let's say we play him. This is just an idea, $200. That leaves us $2,200 left over. We could play Taysom Hill, who quarterback, tight end, receiver, will play a decent amount of snaps, get 1 or 2 targets in the passing game, have a couple rush attempts, maybe throw once or twice. He's not the worst option in the world. And I think he's actually pretty safe for his price tag on both sites. Chris, our NFL Daily Plug main slate writer, has been joking about Taysom Hill Thanksgiving all week on Twitter. He's doing a head-to-head challenge with our NBA writer Garrett where you have to use Taysom Hill. This isn't a joke. You might be able to use him, and you might have to use him in low-risk contests. All right, $800 left over. Here's another option, and bear with me here. What if we captain Taysom Hill? This allows us to get tons of guys into our lineup. Thomas, Brees, Kamara, Ryan, $5,700 left over. We can go Saints defense, which has a high expectation, the 7-point favorite. We can go Russell Gage, who would be the number 2 receiver probably if Julio misses. Brian Hill, if Devontae Freeman is somehow out. Hill has been playing 60% of the snaps or so in Freeman's absence. Different ways you can go here. Again, none are that clear, so I would still limit your low-risk allocation for the slate, especially on FanDuel. As we go over to FanDuel, and if you look, Brees, Thomas, Ryan, Kamara, We actually cannot fit those 4 guys. That only leaves us $1,500 left over. Not great. We have to leave someone out. Maybe it's Thomas as a receiver. He and Kamara have similar half-point PPR expectations. Pretty tough. You have to leave one of them out. And maybe you leave Ryan out. I don't know. This what makes it tough. You have to leave one of these guys out. Let's just say we leave Thomas out for sake of argument. We put in Devontae Freeman. That leaves us $6,500. We can fit in Jackknife, Taysom Hill. Super gross. Super gross slate. Let me see one thing. If we put in Thomas instead, Michael Thomas, Devontae Freeman. So you can do Thomas over Ryan and still fit in Taysom Hill. Again, not great, but again, if you find contests with inexperienced players, this can work because some of the lineups they make are pure trash. If you look at lineups against players without head-to-head badges, without experience badges, I mean, any type of high-floor lineup can beat those inexperienced players. So be sure to look out for that. Again, lower your allocation in general for low risk on this slate, but if you do play, especially lower it on FanDuel. All right, instead, let's talk about the exciting high-risk aspect of this slate. DraftKings has the big $250,000 to first place GPP. We only recommend playing that if you have tickets to it or you're maxing it, which generally is not going to be the case. So stick to 100-player leagues, stick to satellites. Tons of free rolls just in general on this Thanksgiving slate for the 3 games and individual showdown slates on DraftKings. So make sure you're playing the free rolls. They're free. No reason not to play those. So for this game, the total is the highest total of the 3 games on Thanksgiving. As of this recording, total of 49. That is above the 47-point threshold where we start to see pass catchers become more optimal as your captain or MVP. Pass catchers meaning receivers or tight ends. So obviously Michael Thomas is the best bet here. The most targets. He'll also be the most popular. So ways you can differentiate yourself in high-risk contests is you can still use Thomas if you want. However, especially on DraftKings where we have the salary multiplier and you're rewarded for fitting cheaper guys into captain, FanDuel may not be as optimal because they still have to be the highest scoring player. Calvin Ridley, if Julio Jones misses, and even if he doesn't, Calvin Ridley has more targets and air yards than Julio Jones over the last 3 weeks. Julio Jones, if he plays, he is on our underperforming receivers list. He has not scored a touchdown since week 3, which is super Julio Jones of him. However, that type of volume, he's going to have a huge game. And if he is playing, he's likely to be well enough to play most of the snaps. So Julio Jones is also in play. We talked about Christian Blake earlier. If Julio Jones misses, that opens up your lineup to tremendous possibilities. The other guy we really like here in high-risk contests as your captain on DraftKings, especially at his price tag, is Ted Ginn. If we look at his game log, we'll see 5 catches, 38 yards. We'll see 4 catches, 14 yards. We'll see 2 catches, 38 yards. 2 catches, 14 yards. 0 catches, 0 yards. However, underlying metrics, he's on our underperforming wide receiver list that we love to talk about. And if you look at New Orleans over the last 3 weeks, since Drew Brees has returned to week 10, Ted Ginn has 261 air yards on just 12 targets. He's averaging nearly 22 yards in the air per pass attempt. He's due for a big game. If he connects on one of those, he can break the slate at his price tag. So not only for the 3-game slate, but also for this single-game slate as a captain or high-risk play, Ted Ginn's certainly an option. One other thing to keep an eye on, and again, it's a super thin play, but in high risk in a single game, any option is viable and should be considered. Jaden Graham, who we've mentioned a couple times at Occupy Fantasy, did pretty well in the preseason. He had a 53-yard reception last week. Has run a route on a decent amount of dropbacks. The only other tight end on the roster, Luke Stocker, is questionable to play now. So if he cannot go, Jaden Graham should play every snap and give him more opportunities in the passing game. So just someone to consider, especially if Luke Stocker is out. All right, that'll do it for this slate. Lots of things to think about. If you want more in-depth discussion and analysis, go to OccupyFantasy.com. Our Thanksgiving daily plug takes a look at predictive notes for each of the 6 teams playing on Thanksgiving. Talks about the top low-risk and high-risk plays for each game, both in Showdown and on the 3-game slate. We have individual Showdown lineup advice for all 3 games. Then we have a huge section on how to play the 3-game slate. So tons of information there, OccupyFantasy.com. Members only. In fact, the Bears and Lions game is above the paywall, so you get that for free. If you like what you see there, go ahead and become a member and see the rest of the plug. As we said at the top of the show, we have 2 other videos out for the Showdown slates on Thanksgiving, so subscribe below, get all of our latest videos. If you like what we did here, give us a thumbs up. We appreciate it. And if you have comments or if you have questions about this specific slate, comment below. We still have over 24 hours before this game starts. Any comments you have, any questions, I'll make sure to hop back here and answer them in the comments before the slate starts. So appreciate you listening. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Occupy Fantasy. Follow me at Brian Jester FF. Thanks again, and we will talk to you soon.